My brother slept with my fiancée. Then my family defended them like I was the problem. So I walked away and watched their world quietly fall apart. I'm a 25-year-old male who grew up in Colorado in what looked like your typical middle-class family from the outside. But man, the dynamics in that house were something else. My brother Mike, a 24-year-old male, was mom's golden child since basically forever. You know those kids who can literally mess up the carpet and their mom would find a way to praise them for their creativity? That was Mike. While I was busting my ass working construction with my uncle during summers, starting at 16 by the way, Mike got to focus on his artistic side, which basically meant smoking weed in the basement and trying to become a YouTuber. Mom always had these perfectly crafted excuses ready. He's just finding himself, or he's sensitive. He needs time to figure things out. Meanwhile, if I came home tired from a 12-hour shift and didn't immediately jump up to help with dishes, I was becoming lazy and needed to learn responsibility. Don't get me wrong, I was still your typical suburban kid in most ways. I played football in high school and made it to the state finals my senior year. We would have won too if our quarterback hadn't messed up his ankle in the third quarter. I spent weekends working on cars with my dad in the garage. Probably the only time I got to escape mom's constant comparisons between me and Mike. My sister, Emma, a 22-year-old female, was the smart one, always with her nose in a book. She was Dad's favorite, but not in a weird way. It was more like they just understood each other better. She'd help him with crossword puzzles while I worked on cars with him. It was a good balance, you know. College was where I really started to pull ahead of Mike, though Mom would never admit it. I busted my ass through civil engineering at Colorado State, working construction on weekends to avoid student loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped out of community college after 2 semesters because the system was too restrictive for his creative spirit or whatever excuse Mom bought that week. But I was making it work, got decent grades, had good friends, and even landed a solid job at one of the bigger commercial construction companies right after graduation. The pay wasn't amazing at first, but I was making good money for my age, especially in Colorado. Plus, I got to work on actual buildings instead of being stuck behind a desk all day. That's where I met Rachel. She was doing her student teaching at the elementary school next to one of our job sites. I used to see her during lunch breaks, sitting outside with her kids during recess. One day, some kid's ball rolled over to our site, and I brought it back. We got talking, and man, I really thought she was different, you know? She was studying to be a teacher, loved kids, came from a good family, basically everything I thought I wanted. Mom absolutely loved her from day one, which should have been my first red flag looking back. She was always inviting her over for family dinners, even when I was working late at the site. She and Mike would spend hours talking about movies and music while I was busting my ass trying to build us a future. "It's so nice that you and Mike get along so well," Mom would say, beaming like she'd personally arranged it or something. After 3 years together, I proposed last December. I had it all planned out, took her to this spot up in the mountains where we had our first real date, got down on one knee in the snow, the whole 9 yards. She said yes, and I really thought I had it all figured out. We even put a down payment on this nice little house near my parents' place. Rachel talked about wanting at least 3 kids, said she wanted to raise them close to family. "Your mom's going to be such an amazing grandmother," she used to say. Damn, the signs were all there, weren't they? Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I missed. How she'd always find excuses to hang out at my parents' place when I was working weekends. How she and Mike had all these inside jokes I wasn't part of. How Mom would sometimes make these weird comments about how alike they were, or how they just get each other on a different level. But you know how it is. You never want to believe the people closest to you could betray you like that. I remember this one time, about a month before everything went to hell. We were all having dinner at my parents' place. Rachel was telling this story about something that happened at school, and Mike finished her sentence perfectly. They both laughed like it was the most natural thing in the world, while Mom sat there with this weird, satisfied smile on her face. Dad and Emma exchanged this look across the table, but I was too busy thinking about work to notice what it meant. God, I was so blind. Now, here's where everything goes to hell. It was a Tuesday in April. I remember that specifically because we were supposed to pour concrete for this new office building's foundation. But the supplier messed up the delivery schedule. My foreman told me to take the afternoon off since we couldn't do anything until the next day. Normally, I would have stayed and caught up on paperwork, but I thought, hey, maybe I'll surprise Rachel for lunch. She was always saying how I worked too much. I drove home around 1 p.m. and saw Mike's beat-up Jeep in our driveway, that piece of crap car that Mom and Dad bought him for his 21st birthday, even though he'd already totaled 2 other vehicles. I should have known something was up right then. He was supposed to be at his part-time job at the music store, his latest career path that Mom was subsidizing. But I figured maybe he was on lunch break too, coming to tell Rachel about his latest brilliant business idea or whatever. The front door was unlocked. I could hear music coming from upstairs. All of Me by John Legend, Rachel and I's engagement song. Ironic, right? There were clothes scattered up the stairs, his ratty band t-shirt, her teacher's sweater. You know that moment in movies where everything goes quiet and time slows down? That's exactly what happened. I stood there, staring at that sweater, the one I'd gotten her for Christmas, lying there on our stairs, like a neon sign pointing to what was happening in our bedroom. I'm not going to describe what I saw when I opened that door, you can figure it out. But here's the part that really messed with me. They didn't even notice me at first, just kept going like they were in their own little world. When they finally saw me, Mike actually had the balls to say, "Oh shit, bro, like he just spilled a beer on my couch or something." Rachel started crying immediately, pulling sheets around herself, saying, oh God," over and over like a broken record. Mike just sat there, looking at me with this weird mix of guilt and, I don't know, relief, like he was almost glad it was finally out in the open. I didn't say anything, didn't scream, didn't throw punches, though God knows I wanted to. I just turned around, walked downstairs, and sat in my truck for about an hour. They both came out eventually, Mike practically running to his Jeep, Rachel standing on our front porch, in her robe, mascara running down her face. I waited until Mike left, then went back inside. How long? That's all I asked. She tried to dodge the question at first, talking about how things just happened and how she never meant to hurt me, but I just kept asking, how long? Finally, she broke. 2 years. 2 fucking years since right after I started taking weekend shifts to save for her ring. All those Saturdays I spent working overtime, thinking I was building our future, she was with him. Every time she said she had to grade papers or work on lesson plans, she was with him. When she went to my parents' house to help Mom with gardening, yeah, you guessed it. The worst part, she actually tried to explain herself. She sat there on our couch, the couch I'd spent 3 paychecks on because she said it would be perfect for our future family, and told me how she developed feelings for Mike over time, how they had this deep connection through music and art that she and I never had, how she still loved me but was in love with him. I told her she had until the end of the day to get her stuff and get out. She started crying again, saying she needed more time, that we should talk about this. I just walked out, drove to Home Depot, and bought new locks. By the time I got back, she was gone, but she'd left a note. I still have it somewhere. 5 pages of handwritten bullshit about how sorry she was, how she never planned for this to happen, how Mike made her feel understood in a way I never did. I called my boss, told him I needed a few days off, and spent the next 48 hours changing every password I had, bank accounts, social media, everything. I blocked both their numbers. The only reason I even knew what happened next is because Emma told me later. Apparently, Rachel went straight to my parents' house, found Mom in the garden, of course, and broke down crying, confessing everything. And what does my mother do? Hugs her, tells her everything happens for a reason, and that maybe this is for the best. She even made her stay for dinner. My mother made my fiancé dinner the same day she caught her cheating with my brother. Mike showed up too, probably after Rachel called him. He had this whole speech ready about how they didn't choose this, how love just happens, how they wanted to tell me but didn't know how. Mom sat there nodding along like this was some Hallmark movie about star-crossed lovers. Dad just stared at his plate while Emma stormed out. Rachel moved in with her parents initially, but within a week she was spending every night at my parents' house in my old room with my brother, and Mom was just okay with it, actually seemed happy about it. I later found out she'd been encouraging them, telling Mike how Rachel was more his type and telling Rachel how alike they were. The next few days are kind of a blur. I remember Emma coming over with pizza, sitting with me while I alternated between rage and just emptiness. She told me Mom was already talking about when things settle down and how we'll all laugh about this someday. Yeah, right. That weekend, I got an email from Rachel asking to talk about splitting up our shared stuff. I told her to take whatever she wanted. I didn't want anything that reminded me of her anyway. She took most of the furniture, including that damn couch, and left me with an empty apartment and an engagement ring I'm still paying off. So after the initial discovery and Rachel moving out, that's when the real mind games started. Mom began this, I don't know what to call it, this campaign to normalize everything. She'd casually mention how natural Mike and Rachel's connection was, how she'd always seen something special between them. She started bringing up all these memories of them together, rewriting history to make their betrayal seem like some beautiful love story that was meant to be. Remember that music festival they went to together 2 years ago? The one Mom convinced me not to go to because I needed to focus on my career. Yeah, turns out that's when they first hooked up. Mom knew. She fucking knew. She had been encouraging them to spend time together because Rachel brought out a better side of Mike. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks, trying to save up for a house, for a wedding, for the future I thought we were building. The worst part? Mom started suggesting that maybe this was all my fault. You were always so focused on work, she'd say, or Rachel needed someone who could understand her creative side. Like my crime was working hard to build a life, instead of sitting in the basement smoking weed and finding myself like Mike. Then this supervisor position opened up at our Texas branch. The pay was better, like, significantly better, and honestly, I needed an escape plan. The day I heard about it, I had just found out Mom had helped Rachel move some of her stuff into Mike's room, my old room, the room where I'd spent countless nights studying while Mike was out partying, the room where I'd planned my whole future with Rachel. And now they were sleeping in there together, with Mom's blessing. I didn't tell anyone about the job offer at first, kept it to myself while I watched my family bend over backwards to accommodate the people who'd betrayed me. Emma was the only one who seemed to see how messed up it all was, but even she was starting to crack under Mom's pressure. "Maybe we should try to understand their side," she said one day, not meeting my eyes. That's when I knew I had to get out. But before I could tell anyone about moving, Thanksgiving happened. Oh boy, did it fucking happen. I walked into my parents' house, and there they were, Mike and Rachel, sitting at the kitchen table like nothing had happened. Rachel was wearing this sweater I'd bought her last Christmas, looking all cozy and at home. Mike had his arm around her chair, and Mom was beaming at them like they were the royal couple. The moment I walked in, everyone went quiet. You know, that silence that's so thick you could cut it with a knife? Yeah, that. Then Mom starts this rehearsed-sounding speech about healing as a family and learning to forgive. Dad just sat there, nodding like a dashboard bobblehead, and Emma, God, Emma, she was sitting next to them, actually sitting with them, looking at me with these guilty eyes. That's when Mom dropped the bomb. She'd invited Rachel's parents too, wanted to bring the families together since Mike and Rachel were getting serious. Like they hadn't been screwing behind my back for 2 years, like they hadn't destroyed every future plan I had. After seeing Mike and Rachel sitting there at my parents' table like they owned the place, I just broke. You know that moment when everything becomes crystal clear, like when you're drunk and suddenly get sober in an instant? That's what happened. I walked out without saying a word. Mom was calling after me, something about family and healing and whatever other bullshit she'd rehearsed, but I just kept walking. I got in my truck and drove to McDonald's. Sitting there, eating a Big Mac on Thanksgiving. Sounds depressing as hell, right? But honestly, that sad meal in my truck was better than watching my family pretend everything was normal while they passed the gravy to the people who destroyed my life. While I was sitting there, surrounded by the only other people sad enough to be at McDonald's on Thanksgiving, I started making a list on my phone. Everything I needed to do to disappear. Not like witness protection disappear, but fuck this entire situation disappear. The Texas job was already lined up. My boss had been practically begging me to take it. The company was expanding, like crazy down there, and they needed someone with experience running major projects. First thing I did was go to the bank the next morning, opened a new account at a completely different bank, and transferred every penny from my joint accounts. Thankfully, Rachel and I never got around to combining everything. The teller gave me this knowing look when I closed the accounts. Turns out, her ex had cleaned out their joint account when he left, so she was extra careful making sure everything was properly documented. Next was the phone. Did you know that if you're on a family plan, the primary account holder can see every number you call or text? Yeah, Mom had been using that to keep tabs on me for years. I went to a different carrier, got a new number, new phone, everything. The guy at the store helped me transfer all my important stuff without linking it to any of my old accounts. Social media was next. But before I nuked everything, I downloaded all my photos and important messages. Then I started blocking people. Mike, Rachel, Mom, Dad, their friends, their families, everyone who'd chosen their side. I left Emma unblocked but unfriended her. She was still on the fence, and I couldn't deal with that either. I changed my email and created new social media accounts under a different name for work stuff. The apartment was trickier. I still had 4 months on the lease, but my landlord was surprisingly cool about it. Turns out, he'd gone through something similar with his brother years ago. He let me break the lease with just 1 month's penalty. I started packing that night, threw out anything Rachel and I had bought together. That couch she'd left behind? I posted it for free on Craigslist. Some college kids came and got it within an hour. I was supposed to start the Texas job in January, but I called my boss and told him I needed to start sooner. I made up some bullshit about wanting to get settled before the holidays. He was stoked, said they needed help ASAP anyway. I found an apartment in Houston through a guy at work, signed the lease electronically, and paid the deposit that day. The next week was a blur of packing and planning. I only told 2 people what I was doing, my best friend from the construction crew and my old foreman. They helped me load the U-Haul, no questions asked. My foreman even gave me a heads up that Mom had been calling the office looking for me. The fucking irony. While I was packing, Mom kept trying to arrange this big family meeting to work things out. She kept leaving these voicemails about how we needed to heal together and how running away from problems doesn't solve them. Rich, coming from the woman who'd been running from reality for years, pretending her precious golden child could do no wrong. The day I left, December 15th, was cold as hell, like frost on the windows, breath freezing cold. It felt appropriate somehow. I got up at 4 a.m., loaded the last few boxes, and hit the road before the sun was up. I didn't leave a note, didn't tell anyone goodbye, just got in my truck with a U-Haul hitched to the back and started driving south. Mom must have noticed something was up pretty quick because, by the time I hit Kansas, my phone was blowing up with messages from random relatives. Apparently, she'd gone to my apartment, found it empty, and started calling everyone she could think of, crying about how I'd abandoned the family and how she was worried sick. I just kept driving. Somewhere in Oklahoma, I got a friend request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. It was Mom, trying to be sneaky. Her message was a piece of work. Why would you move without telling us? We're your family. We miss you and need you home for the holidays. We can work through this together. I replied with the most satisfying message I've ever written. You only have one son left. I'm not part of that family anymore. Then I blocked her new account and kept driving. I hit Texas that night, checked into a hotel because I was too tired to deal with the apartment, and laid there in that generic hotel room, staring at the ceiling. And you know what? For the first time in months, I actually slept through the night. No stress dreams, no waking up angry, just peace. I found out later that Mom had a complete meltdown when she read my message. She started calling everyone in the family, crying about how her baby boy was making rash decisions and how she'd failed as a mother. Yeah, no shit, you failed, Mom, just not in the way you think. So there I was in Texas, actually starting to build a decent life for myself. I got promoted to project manager within 3 months. Turns out, when you're not dealing with constant family drama, you can actually focus on work. I bought myself a new F-150, the kind Mike always wanted but couldn't afford because artists don't care about material things. I started training MMA at this local gym, figured I needed a healthy way to deal with all the anger, and was finally sleeping through the night without waking up wanting to punch walls. And it happened. It was a Wednesday in January when I got the call. I was on site, reviewing plans with my foreman, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but it had a Colorado area code. I almost didn't answer it, kind of wish I hadn't. It was my Aunt Susan, Mom's sister, the only reasonable one in the family. She was crying, which immediately set off alarm bells because Aunt Susan never cries. She said Mom had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, terminal, 3 months to live, maybe less. She said Mom was asking for me, wanted to make peace before, I sat there in my truck for an hour after that call, just staring at nothing. I called my boss, told him I needed a few days and booked a flight back to Colorado for the next morning. I even packed a suit because I thought, well, you know what I thought. The whole flight back I was thinking about Mom. Yeah, she'd fucked up royally with the whole Mike and Rachel situation, but she was still my mother. I started remembering all the good times, her coming to my football games, making my favorite meals when I was sick, teaching me how to drive in that old Subaru. By the time the plane landed, I'd convinced myself that maybe this was a sign, maybe we could fix things before it was too late. Aunt Susan picked me up at the airport. I should have noticed something was off when she wouldn't look me in the eye. She said Mom was at home, wanted to see me right away. I walked into that house, the house I grew up in, the house I hadn't set foot in since Thanksgiving, and there they all were, Mom, Dad, Mike, Rachel, Emma, even Rachel's parents. No hospital bed, no medical equipment, Mom looking healthy as ever in her favorite gardening sweater. The silence was deafening. Mom started crying, her fake crying, the kind where she makes sure everyone can see her tears, saying how she had to do something to get me home, how she couldn't bear to have her family torn apart. Mike and Rachel were holding hands, looking guilty but also satisfied, like they thought this was somehow going to fix everything. You know that moment in movies where the hero just snaps, that perfectly calm fury where everything becomes crystal clear? Yeah, that happened. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw her for what she was. This manipulative, toxic woman who'd spent my entire life enabling one son while destroying the other. You faked having cancer, I said, so quietly that they had to lean in to hear me. You faked having terminal cancer to manipulate me into coming back. Mom tried to justify it, started talking about how desperate times call for desperate measures, and how a mother will do anything to keep her family together. Rachel actually nodded along, like this was somehow reasonable behavior. Mike just stared at the floor, probably thinking about how he could turn this into material for his shitty poetry. Dad finally spoke up, trying to play peacemaker, like always. Son, your mother just wants to fix things. We all miss you. Mike and Rachel are engaged now, and we need to find a way to be a family again. That's when I lost it. Not violently, I was past that. Just started laughing, couldn't stop. Here was my family who'd betrayed me in every way possible, who'd lied about fucking cancer, sitting there expecting me to just fall in line with their delusion. I looked at each of them in turn. You know what the funny thing is? I actually felt guilty on the plane. I was thinking about all the good memories, wondering if I'd been too harsh. But this, I gestured around the room, this is actually a gift because now I know with absolute certainty that I made the right choice cutting you all out of my life. Mom started wailing, her real crying this time, the ugly kind she usually keeps private because it ruins her makeup. Mike stood up, probably to try some brotherly bullshit, but I just held up my hand. The only reason I came back was because I thought my mother was dying. Congratulations, Mom. You just killed any chance of ever having a relationship with me again. I turned around and walked out. I could hear them calling after me, Mom's cries getting more hysterical by the second. Rachel actually tried to follow me, saying something about understanding my pain. I just kept walking. Aunt Susan was waiting in her car, crying for real this time. Turns out Mom had manipulated her too, told her I was suicidal and needed an intervention, said the cancer story was the only way to get me home. Classic Mom, using everyone's emotions against them. I got an Uber to the airport, caught the next flight back to Texas, and blocked every Colorado number in my phone except Aunt Susan's. She'd earned the right to stay connected after exposing Mom's manipulation. After the cancer stunt, I threw myself into work and building my new life in Texas. I started dating Sarah, this awesome girl I met at my MMA gym. She was different from Rachel in every way, independent, straightforward, zero interest in playing family politics. She'd heard bits and pieces of my story through mutual friends, but never pushed me to talk about it, just accepted me as I was, baggage and all. Things with Sarah were going great. She was a trauma nurse, worked crazy hours like me, and understood the value of hard work in a way Rachel never did. We'd been together almost a year when Christmas rolled around. Her family invited me to spend the holidays with them in Dallas. Normal family, good people. Her dad was a retired firefighter who actually wanted to hear about my construction projects. Her mom kept trying to feed me more ham and wouldn't take no for an answer. It felt healthy, real. Christmas Eve was perfect. Sarah's mom made this incredible fettuccine alfredo, their family tradition. We exchanged gifts and watched old Christmas movies. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe I could have this kind of normal family life again. I should have known better. Christmas morning started out great too. More food, more presents, more of that warm family feeling I'd been missing. Then Sarah's mom mentioned they were expecting some family friends for dinner. I didn't think much of it at first, even helped set up extra chairs in the dining room. The doorbell rang around 4 p.m. Sarah's mom went to answer it and I heard them before I saw them. My mother's voice trying to sound sweet and concerned, like she always did when she had an audience. My whole body went cold. I turned around and there they were. Mom, Dad, Emma, Mike, and Rachel, standing in the doorway like some fucked up Christmas card. That's when I saw Sarah's face. Not surprised, just guilty. She'd known. She'd helped plan this whole thing. Turns out she'd been talking to my mother for months, coordinating this intervention because she thought she was helping. My mother had fed her some story about how worried they all were about me, how I was running from my problems, how I needed family support to heal properly. Mom started her usual routine. What they did was wrong, but your actions are unacceptable too. Like somehow me leaving town was equal to my brother screwing my fiancée for 2 years. Dad chimed in about how enough was enough and how Mike had suffered enough for his mistakes. Suffered. He got the girl, kept the family, and I'm the one who needed to get over it. Rachel was there, holding Mike's hand, wearing this fancy new engagement ring. Pretty sure it was bought with the money from selling my old house, the one Mom had convinced them to invest in as a couple after I left. She tried to speak, probably to share some profound insight about how love works in mysterious ways or whatever bullshit they'd rehearsed. I cut her off, looked right at Sarah, and said, "Find your own way home. I'll pick up my things later." Simple, quiet, final. Everyone started talking at once. Sarah crying, Mom doing her theatrical gasping thing, Mike trying to play peacemaker like he had any right. As I was leaving, Mom grabbed my arm, started going on about how their family name was so important, how she'd raised me better than this. That's when I told her I'd already changed my last name months ago. You'd think I told her I'd committed murder. She actually collapsed into a chair, wailing about family legacy and tradition. The drive back to Houston was long and quiet. I had plenty of time to think about how fucking stupid I'd been, trusting someone again. Sarah called about 50 times that night, left voicemails about how she was just trying to help, how she thought bringing everyone together would fix things. Classic manipulation victim. My mom had played her, just like she played everyone else. I got back to my apartment, around 3 a.m., looked at the Christmas tree Sarah and I had decorated together, all the presents still wrapped underneath. I took every gift she'd given me over the past year and put them in a box, added the spare keys she'd left, the toothbrush from my bathroom, everything. I dropped it all off at her place the next morning before she got back from Dallas. The worst part? I found out later that this whole Christmas intervention had been in the works for months. Sarah had been reporting back to my mother about everything. Where I was working, who I was hanging out with, if I was dating anyone else. She'd even helped them find my new address, which I'd kept private specifically to avoid this kind of shit. Mom had played Sarah perfectly, shown her old family photos, told stories about how close we all used to be, painted this picture of a concerned mother just trying to help her troubled son. And Sarah, wanting to be the one who fixed everything, fell for it hook, line, and sinker. About a year later, my company won this huge contract to demolish and rebuild a bunch of foreclosed properties in Colorado. Guess whose house was on that list? Yep, my parents' place, the one Mom had remortgaged to pay for Mike and Rachel's dream wedding. The same house where she'd hosted all those family dinners, where she'd orchestrated her little manipulations, where she'd welcomed my brother and ex into my old room. I personally volunteered to oversee that demolition. I drove up there on a Tuesday morning and watched them tear down every last brick. Mom showed up halfway through, probably tipped off by a neighbor. She looked old. Not just older, but worn down. I found out later she's working as a Walmart greeter now, her first real job in 30 years. Karma's got a sense of humor, I guess. But that's just the beginning. Through Emma, who finally grew a spine and reached out to apologize, I got the full update on everyone's spectacular downfall. Mike and Rachel's perfect marriage crashed and burned 6 months in. Turns out, Rachel's got a type, she likes to cheat. She got caught with Mike's best friend, the same guy who was his best man at their wedding. But here's the real kicker. She's pregnant with his kid. The same Rachel who couldn't have children is now carrying his ex-best friend's baby. Mike didn't handle it well, started drinking heavily, and lost his job at the music store after showing up drunk one too many times. He's living in Mom's basement now, in their crappy rental apartment, writing angsty songs about betrayal. The irony is completely lost on him. Mom and Dad finally separated. Turns out, Mom had been lying about their finances for years, taking out credit cards in Dad's name to fund Mike's projects, and the wedding Dad found out when they tried to refinance the house, and the bank laughed them out. He's living with my aunt now, finally started therapy, and actually called to apologize. Said he should have stood up to Mom years ago. Rachel's teaching career is over. Word got around about her history of sleeping with her students' relatives. Yeah, turns out Mike wasn't the first, and no school district will touch her now. She's working at a call center, living with her new baby daddy in some rundown apartment complex. Her parents, who were so understanding about her following her heart with Mike, won't even speak to her now. As for me, life's actually pretty good. I met this amazing woman named Molly at the grocery store about a year ago. She's nothing like Rachel or Sarah, direct, honest, and actually has a moral compass. We moved in together 6 months ago, and she's pregnant with our first kid. When she found out, she made it clear she didn't want any contact with my family, even blocked them all on social media before I could ask. Mom somehow found out about the baby. Small-town gossip never dies, and sent me a box of my old baby things with this long letter about family legacy and second chances. The baby stuff was mine, so I kept it, but the letter went straight in the trash. She even tried creating new social media accounts to reach me, posting about how much she misses her firstborn and how a child needs their grandmother. I blocked every single account. Emma's getting married next month. She and Dad want to reconcile. No Mom or Mike involved. They said they've both been in therapy, working through their roles in everything that happened. Emma admitted she was too weak to stand up to Mom back then, and Dad acknowledged how his passivity enabled everything. Molly says maybe it's time to consider letting them back in, but she's not pushing it. She's seen all the screenshots, read all the manipulative messages, knows the whole story. She says she'll support whatever I decide, but also reminds me that people can change if they do the work. The key word being if. Watching Karma finally catch up with everyone has been surprisingly empty. I thought I'd feel satisfied seeing them all suffer, but mostly I just feel relieved. Relieved that I got out, relieved that I built my own life, relieved that I broke the cycle.